Peace, 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 peace. Welcome, everybody. It's your sister Roo with MaWu Lisa Temple, beautiful upstate New York, Hudson Valley, and we are here on another Saturn day. It is the UnRead Book Review with Nick and Roo. This is my homeboy, my partner, my brother in all things good. Yes, Nick is in the building. And again, I'm your sister Roo. Thank you for joining us another weekend. If you are new here, welcome. If you are coming back to join us again, welcome back. So glad to have you again. I promise to bring you something really awesome as we do every time we get together. And Nick and I love doing this. So, we're excited. April is Poetry Month. So we both decided to bring something that was poetry based today. And so I'm excited to see what Nick has to share. And I'm really excited to share my offering with you as well. Before we get started, if you are not subscribed, please subscribe so you know what we got going on. We have some great things going on here. Not only do we talk about unread books, we talk about reread books. We talk about recommended books, things that we use as references. And also we have authors here sharing their unique process with us about the way they put together their books and also the things that might be unseen in these unread books. So it's nice to be able to speak directly with the authors. And we do offer that as much as we can on this platform. So if you are an author and you have a book and you'd like to share it with us, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or to Nick. You can reach out to us on Instagram at Mawulisatemple1 or by Gmail, Mawulisatemple@gmail.com or at Mr. Westbrooks on Instagram. You can always also comment below, and we both keep those monitors so we will be able to reach out to you. And if you have any book recommendations, we love those too. So send them on in. So before we get started, Nick, how was your week? What you got going on? Talk to us. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great. I'm doing amazing, and I'm going to open up before we get started a little bit differently today. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this to open up. Roses are red. Violets are blue. It's time for UnRead Book Review with your host, Nick and Roo.
I can't stand you.
Every other Saturday, subscribe on YouTube. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a view. Welcome to our world. It's our favorite thing to do. We have infinite conversations with so many books to choose. From business to metaphysics, to stories for the youth, history, fiction, and spirituality, just to name a few. So sit back and relax and watch us get into our groove. This is the poetry episode. Allow me to set the mood with this creative expression delivered from me straight to you.
You know what? I am screaming because of the simple fact, everybody that watches us, and again, thank you for watching us. Nick, that was amazing. We always think about the things that we had in common that we were going to do, or some kind of way our books tied together. And I promise you on everything, one of my first lines was, how we mostly learn about poetry is roses are red, violets are blue. Yep. And the fact that you did this amazing adaptation for us, I am loving it. Yes, give it up for Nick, y'all. Give it up for the English professor, bringing it home for us. Yes, we are in capable hands. I'm so excited. That just made me so excited, yo. I'm ready for us to be finished now. I'm done. What else is there to say? That was beautiful. I loved it. So continue, Nick. Thank you.
Now, yes, I'm going back to my regular opening. I mean, not that I have a regular opening, I'll just be saying whatever's on my mind at the time. But but yes, as always, I'm excited to be here for another edition, another episode. And like I said in that poem that I just wrote, I wrote this last night. Um, it's our favorite thing to do. One of our favorite things to do is to get on here. Well, not even just to get on here, just to talk about books. Period. Whether we're on here or we're offline, this is one of our favorite things to do, to talk about books. So I always, have joy when we're doing that. And looking at today's numbers, the universally, when we add up the month of April, the 19th day on the calendar in 2025, it adds up to a number 5 universal day. And that number 5 is a expression number, a literary number for writing and for reading and writing, for literacy. And if you have, so the number 5 and also the number 3 are numbers that are connected to expression. Number 3, more so in the creative expression and especially vocally using your voice. But number 5, picking up that pen and paper or getting on that keyboard and writing something original. That's connected to the number 5. That's a communication number. So we're right in sync with this poetry episode, with the frequency of the universal energy. And looking at the 19th, the 1 and 9, both of those are creative energies as well. The number 9 being at the front end of the number line, the number 9 being at the end, the alpha and the omega, but they're both creative numbers, especially the number 9, both connected to creativity. So we're right in sync and lockstep with the frequency and the energy for today. So I'm ready to go ahead and talk about our offerings, our book offerings. You see them in the title, you see them in the description. If you haven't already previewed them, we have 2 great offerings that we're going to discuss and maybe even share a couple of pieces from. So I'm ready to get into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As always, Nick, I love everything that you bring to this space. And yes, everybody, this is what we do. We do it online and we do it off. This is one of our favorite things to do. This is one of our main connections to each other spiritually, is that we love to discuss books. And when we do, just like he said in his beautiful poem, everything you can imagine we talk about. So it doesn't matter the genre of the book, and one of the things I appreciate that you bring to the space as well is the numerology. And it's so interesting because today I have over my shoulder, I have 2 cards that were drawn for today. One is the love and magic card, which is a 33. So the fact that you brought the 33 in there, and writing is spelling and spelling is magic. So, you love and magic. I thought that was fantastic. And also, we have Uranus, which is equal to the Tower card. And if you look above that, you see the sunshine that comes, when we break old ideologies and ways and, things that keep us from expressing our true selves. So I think that is great that we are all in line. And that Uranus card vibrates to the number 4, which is a special number for both of us. So yes. So I think, yes, we are definitely in step, in tune, in line with the offerings that we're bringing and with the effort that we're bringing to this space. Again, we do this because we love it, and we love when you share back with us. So please, everything Nick said in that poem, which I think is going to be our opening every time, and just share with us, let us know, tell us, talk to us. We love sharing with you. So Nick, I see you have something rather contemporary in regards to poetry, and I have something rather old, you know. So
Balance.
if I may, I'd like to start this week. Usually I push it off to you because I'd be so
Okay.
excited.
Hey,
But
by all means.
I think that since we started with roses are red and violets are blue, we can start at the beginning.
Oh yeah,
We
yeah. By all means. That listen. That's a look. They go to 1 and 9 again. You got the beginning, and I'll come in at the end. You know
absolutely.
yeah. It's the perfect balance between the classic and the contemporary. I love it.
Absolutely. You know, I love being in this space, and you know, I love books. I mean, I don't think you could find a book that I didn't like, right? So what I'll say to that is that, you know, my introduction to books, as I talked about before, my mother was an avid reader. She took us, you know, to the library every weekend. We read all kinds of things, but you know, she did leave us to our own devices to go off and read whatever we were, you know, wanted to in a particular section and what have you. But our introduction to more formal writing, and this is another reason why I leave the best for last. You know, while you know I love to read, I love to write. You know, when it came to poetry, I found it very difficult, and I don't know if I found it more difficult to write it and be able to like what I wrote, or better yet, when I read things, I wasn't always sure of what it was I was supposed to be getting from a particular piece. So what I can say is that while reading is one of those things that I feel that you know you can pick up on as a youth, you know, a little more easily. I think poetry is one of those spaces where you actually do need either a little bit of historical reference or a guide through a particular, you know, time and era of the way that, you know, things were said and written and things like that, because some of these words that are used a lot of times are used in ways that we don't use them now. And so for the new reader to go back and think about, you know, poetry, you always think of to be or not to be or something. You know, they give you such these limited, you know, spaces to begin in history with poetry, that I think that a proper introduction sometimes is needed to even understand some of the poetry that we read. You know, for example, understanding what time period a person is in and what kind of things are going on historically and globally and all this stuff kind of helps you to understand the language that they choose to use. Again, in our esoteric art space, you know, this is where we talk about things like this, you know, like time, place, symbology, look, you know, all of these different things like that. So my book, Treasury of Classic Poetry, it's a heavy one. It's a thick one. She thick. She thick. She thick. She thick. Now, let me just say, anybody that knows me know I don't lend out books like that. You know, it's hard for me to lend out a book, and even more, it's hard for me to hold the book for somebody. And the reason why I say that is because it's important to treat people's things, you know, in an honorable way. And so if somebody trusts me with their book, believe me when I tell you, I will I will protect this book. This is a book that was actually given to me and asked for me to hold because the person couldn't take the particular book with them. They happened to bookmark off a couple of pieces. I was going to try to get the person to be here with us today. Unfortunately, they were not able to, but they did say that those places they marked off were of significance and taking a look at. So we'll look at some of those. But what I want to do before I get into that is just tell you a little bit about the book itself. It is a compilation of poetry, and here in this first printing, it looks like it was done in 2014, and then the hardcover and the end paper, like I guess the gold wrapping and all that stuff, the what do you call it, the anniversary version was done in 2021. This says that this 2021 edition was printed specially for Barnes and Noble booksellers. So if you look for this, you'll only find this if you kind of get it from Barnes and Noble, because this was printed for them. Okay, so there was this. They asked to have a compilation of poetry put together. So it's quite a few authors in here. Okay, so I won't read them all to you, but what I'll say is they start with Sir Thomas Wyatt, Sir Philip Sidney, Christopher Marlowe, John Donne. That's a name we might recognize. Andrew Marvell, Henry Vaughan, Alexander Pope, Wordsworth, Longfellow, Emerson. Those are moving in towards names that we kind of get to know. Lord Byron, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and many, many more. Okay, Robert Frost, and they end with T.S. Eliot. Now, what I was saying about the where we learn poetry and why it's important, and Nick, I actually kind of wanted you to jump in here if we can, because this is more one of those things where I was saying, I struggled with poetry when I was in school, and I think one of the reasons was because sometimes I couldn't relate to what the author was saying, and we didn't understand in what context and what reference we were measuring it against, or we're children. So to give somebody Shakespeare, any bit of it, which they have Shakespeare here, and they have him, it says William Shakespeare, 1563 through 1616. We were so far removed from 1616, we had no idea what was going on. And many times you have, I love the way, and for those who don't know, Nick is a overqualified educator, professor in our public schools, and the way he teaches is amazing, and a lot of teachers could really learn some lessons. But I think one of the problems is that we had educators who, while they may understand the literature, they didn't know how to make it digestible for youth. You know what I'm saying? For a younger person to be able to digest it and still be able to get something from it. Sometimes the things were, kind of self-explanatory, but even in that regard, many times we just didn't know what we were reading, and this stuff was so much older than what we had any reference to. It was hard for us to do. So I kind of wanted to ask you a question. When you are in the work that you do, and you're introducing things like poetry, how did you bring this more classic type of writing into your work and make it where it was digestible to the youth?
Right. Well, poetry is creative expression, and we have to understand that there is a level of subjectivity when it comes to interpreting poetry as opposed to other forms of literature, or even just other forms of text outside of literature, like nonfiction, history, social studies, science, et cetera, et cetera. So one approach that I have is, especially when you have that really antiquated language that we're far removed from, is to look for the words or the phrases that you do recognize, that you are able to point out and understand and make meaning from. And it's also, the language is one part of it. The other part of it is the format and structure of poetry itself. So there requires some instruction on the structure and the format of poetry, in terms of lines and stanzas, and how the writer or the poet chooses to break up the lines and the stanzas. Like, for example, do they continue the line, continue a line, or do they break it and go to the next line? What type of punctuation that do they use? Does it rhyme? What type of tone do you feel coming from the speaker? How do you feel emotionally as you're reading it? So what I'm getting at is that there are layers and levels to interpreting poetry, depending on how deep you want to get into it. But you would start with reading poetry on a very literal level. What is going on in here? How do you feel when you're reading it? What words stand out to you? And then you can go deeper, go into a deeper analysis of it. Also, to make the poetry accessible to my students, it's important to introduce those works by talking about the poets and the authors themselves, by giving some background information on their lives, the time periods in which they were living, where they were living. Were they living in America? Were they living in England? Were they living in Africa? That all gives context to understanding the poetry at a deeper level. What is their writing style? What topics do they like to focus on in their writing? Some of the poets that you mentioned in your offering, they like to focus on nature. Some of them like to focus on spiritual topics. Some of them like to focus on human interactions. So when you approach a poem having all of that background information, it definitely helps making it more accessible. And then if you're preparing for some type of exam, currently I'm preparing my AP literature students for the AP exam. So of course they won't be able to have resources to help them during the test, but it's also okay to pull out resources, to pull out dictionaries and do your Googles and essentially translate what you see in the poem. But the strategies that I was describing initially at the beginning of this explanation, those are strategies that you can use if you don't have access to dictionaries or history on the poet's background, or if you can't look up interpretations or translations of some of these words. Those are strategies that you can use to help you gain some insight. But for the casual, non-academic reader of poetry, it's a little bit more free flowing. It's creative expression, so it's open to interpretation. You can read it and interpret poetry however you like, as long as you are able to explain why you think the way you do about a certain work. You're not necessarily wrong about it. Like a poem can be put in front of both me and Roo. Roo might see something and get her interpretation. I might come with a completely different interpretation, and we can both be correct about that. And that's applicable to not just poetry, but other types of texts. A lot of our religious and spiritual texts are like that. Some of our fictional, like our novels, are like that as well. So I know that's the long that's the long answer.
No, but that's great. That's the great answer. And you know what? It rolls right into what I wanted to talk about again with this kind of poetry being intimidating, as a youth, because they do make you think that there's a right or wrong answer. They don't leave any space for interpretation, and even if they did, we had no context into which to reference it. We at most times when they introduce some of these things like this, you know, your children, you're not even in high school yet, you know, some of these things that they enter. But one of the things that I was going to talk about on the flip side of that is writing poetry. Because of course, every time you get an assignment in school, now they want you to do, you know, every time you get a poem assigned to you in school, they want you to write one, right? And that's where I think what shaped my appreciation and low-key fear of trying to write poetry at any level other than for my own entertainment, you know, because you know you would get very sing-songy, rhymey kind of poems, and now when you're trying to sit down and write a poem, you're thinking everything has to rhyme, everything has to be in meter, you know. I've read poems that one sentence made no sense to the other one, really, and that was fine, but they don't share that with you at that level. When you're first introduced to poetry, they making you think everything has to be this cohesive, tight little box, when you know it's really not. It's art, and it is open into interpretation. And one of the things that I love, and we talk about how reread is, you know, is one of the reasons we bring these books back, because again, this is an old work. This is not new. This is not the 2000s. You know what I'm saying? This is good old stuff here. And you know, one of the reasons we go back sometimes and look at these type of works is because we will find a line or some lines that inspire us, or you know, either to write or to think a different way or to approach something a different way. So at one time, if you would have asked me, oh, or would you, you know, if you had an opportunity, you know, would you read contemporary poetry, you know, more spoken word stuff, or would you read this? I have an appreciation for this, but this wouldn't be the first thing I would run to. Now, at this age, understanding and rereading and understanding what art and expression is, it allowed me to be able to go back in, and even if I can't, or should I say, even if I don't know exactly what the author was going for in there, it's a couple of lines that spark something in me to create, you know. And that's what I think it's about. I think art should imitate, you know, it should inspire us to create and write and do and making, you know, on our own. And I found that with this, as I said, the person who asked me to house this book had some poems marked off here, and I'll just grab one and give you an example of something that they always do. So Edgar Allan Poe, we get those. We always get invited to that in school because it's one of the quote unquote classics. And so you'll find many people can relate to those poems a little bit more because they're familiar with the author, because this is an author we talk about, like Nick said, often. We find out when he was and where he was, and you know, who were the people around him, what work was he most famous for, she most famous for. And you know, his is The Raven, and that's 1809 to 1849. So we're not talking now. But when you go back and you look at one like this one here that the owner of this book has marked off, is by William Blake, and it's called Infant Joy. I have no name, I am but 2 days old. What shall I call thee? I happy am. Joy is my name. Sweet joy befall thee. Now instantly my child mind goes to, what do you mean I happy am? You done threw me off, you done lost me after that, because I'm like, why does it just not say I am happy? I happy am. And you know, and I think that when you are reading these kind of things and you have no guidance from the outside, it's important to reread and sit with and think of all the possibilities that are in that. So let me just read the last part of it to you. Pretty joy, Sweet joy, but 2 days old. Sweet joy, I call thee. Thou dost smile. I sing the while. Sweet joy befall thee. And that's Infant Joy by William Blake. And that's a short one, and I picked that one because some of the ones that they picked were rather lengthy. But what my point is that with something like that, we don't have any real background on that author. We don't know, it's talking about infant joy. Is it talking about the joy of an actual infant or a state of infancy? I am 2 days old. It's so much to be left to interpretation that we can see why poetry is one of those things that we keep in our arsenal to be able to go back to and expand our mind and sometimes even our understanding of not just what the author was trying to say, but how it can be applicable to whatever we have going on our journey. So there's another by Wallace Stevens called the 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. I'm not going to read that because it's quite long, but I would say if you would like an interesting read, that is definitely one of them. 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. I don't really have a whole lot to share in terms of reading the poetry from this particular book. What I will say is that some of the authors here have such different varying views of what is poetry from, again, their perspective. And I think it would be worth adding this to your list of reference books. And one of the examples I like to give, though, is from Robert Herrick. And this is from his poem, His Winding Sheet. I was reading this piece and it starts come thou who art wine with. And it's just like, okay. But I kept reading and I worked my way through, and there was something that stood out to me. It says, here the slaves and prisoners be, from shackles free, and weeping widows long oppressed do here find rest. The wronged client ends his laws here and his cause. Here those long suits of chancery lie, quiet or die. That by itself made me take pause and just think about that part of it. Just think about that part of it. Here's this poem, with all these words around it that I may or may not be able to connect to, but those words stood out to me. And those words are the words I took away with me. And I went and I sat and I asked myself, why do these words stand out to me? What is it that this brings to me? How does this relate to my journey? How does this relate to the things I've seen in my journey, in my history? How does it apply to my future, if at all? So I just want to say that some of our reread books are there for reference. Go back, provoke deeper thought. So again, this is a treasury of classic poetry put together for Barnes and Noble, with various authors in it of all all walks of life. There are a lot more men than women, and there are no people really that kind of related to me in my walk. So it's just nice to see that while we have some contemporary works that may or may not reflect visions of us, we are able to get something from those books to move us forward in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also find that some of the themes, that's another approach to poetry, is examining the themes that are discussed themes and the topics, and we find that some or even a lot of those themes and topics transcend time periods, they transcend background, they transcend setting, you know, nationality, race, gender, and that's what. And I really appreciate when a work of poetry or any other type of literature is able to do that, where you're able to pull out those themes and those topics that we call them universal themes in the classroom. They're called universal because they apply to a large range of people and audiences and readership. And if you've been watching us for a while, you notice that a lot of our books and even our offerings between Roo and I were able to make those connections because of those themes and in the topics. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of those poems in that collection relate to books that we've discussed in previous episodes, and we're able to make those connections. That's another thing that I like to do. I like to pair text together, different type of text, poetry with a short story, or poetry with a novel. We talked about art influencing or encouraging people to create more art. That's what we do. It doesn't even have to be written. A couple of days ago, we were showing how a painting inspired a poem. And in my offering, when we go to my offering, there's visual art that's connected to this book of poetry that I'm getting ready to share. But yes, thank you for that offering, Roo, bringing that balance for the classic, so I can come in on the other side and bring the contemporary. But that's a great offering, and I think in my age now, I've grown more of an appreciation for the classic works than I did as a younger person. Now that I'm able to pick out those themes and topics and make connections to things that are going on now and other things that I might have read or watched.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's fantastic, that we're getting ready to listen to something more contemporary, because even embedded in that is the classic stuff, but in a more, in an updated way and from a different viewer's eyes. I think that's important to recognize as well. If I mentioned the slaves, writing from a slave perspective versus the person writing about the slaves, you're going to get two very different stories. And again, if you have no context of the period that's going on, it's just sounding like a bunch of words. But as like you said, as we get older, we're able to go back and appreciate some of these offerings, because we definitely can dissect them in a way that they make more sense to us. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to discuss works, not only with you, Nick, but with our audience, because again, I'm sure there's a lot of people who struggle with poetry, and you have so much to say. And, let me just say that roses are red, violets are blue thing, it did kind of scar me, you know what I mean? And moving forward, whenever I would try to write poetry, it was so funny, because either it would be the sing-songy, rhymey one, or these ones where dark nights of pain and sorrow, and it was just so dramatic, because they made you feel like it had to be one or the other. And one of the things I appreciate about contemporary poetry is that you're just talking about you, and you're just talking about life. And and even though they were too, it was like you had to understand the code to be able to understand it. So now, moving forward, while we have some of these great things to offer, we're able to just be ourselves. Hey, thank Queen Rashi. Yes.
Yes, that's our sister Monique right there.
Hey, sister, good to see you. Welcome,
Yeah.
welcome.
Yep.
Yes, yes. This poetry stuff. I mean, I would love to be a prolific poet.
Yep.
But that was just not for me. You can't be perfect at everything. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
yeah, and I love poetry too, sis. And that's why we love dedicating this time, and we don't just have poetry during poetry month, but it's great to be able to bring it at this time when people's eyes and ears and hearts are receptive to this type of energy. So Nick, I'm ready for what you got to offer here. I'm excited. And yeah, let's get it going. Hey there, peace, peace, peace. Assalamu alaikum, brother. We got Knowledge Born Allah in the house. One of our prolific writers, absolutely. Bringing us things from Do the Knowledge Radio. So check them out if you're not checking them out.
Yep. Peace to the God.
Peace to the God. Yes.
Yep. Yes. So, as I mentioned, my work is a contemporary work published in, let me give you the year. Published in 2021. Now this is an unread. I haven't read yet. It's a book that I got about a year ago at a event at our school during this month. It was a poetry month event. I was at the school. It was on a Saturday. I was at the school preparing my AP seminar students for their AP exam that was coming up in the following month in May, and I caught the tail end of this event. It was with the author of this book, The Peace Chronicles. So the guest speaker was Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz. So even though I missed most of the program since I was in class, I was able to catch the tail end with a couple of students doing some reading and the book signing at the end. So I was able to get both of her books for free too, which is even better. We love, how we love free books. So I have both of her books. But I was only able to find one right now. I can't. One was in my classroom. I left one in my classroom as a part of my class library and display. I'm wondering if the other one is in there too, but I wasn't able to find it in time for this broadcast. So I do have one of her books, but I will. Oh, let me put the title up here again. The title of this work is called The Peace Chronicles by Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz. And this is the cover. I know it might be a little hard to see with my virtual background, but I had to pull it back far because if I put it too close, it might wash out. But you can see the title there, and that cover art is actually an original piece. It's an original piece, not by the author. It's an original piece by, let me go back over here. I think it's in the beginning here. Let me give you the name of the author. Let me give shout outs and respects to the author. I mean, to the artist.
Right.
Okay, here it is. So the painting is this painting that you see here, as well as on the cover, is by David Ickard. With additional photography by Vincent Jones II.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and talk about the Peace Chronicles. And about the book, peace. So we have peace is defined as a state of tranquility or quiet, and chronicles defined as a historical account of events in order of time, usually without analysis or interpretation. So it says the Peace Chronicles is poet and scholar activist Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz's second full-length collection, documenting her last moments in the vortex. The book moves from a searing betrayal by Tyrone, love from the vortex and other poems, to her equanimity with it. The poems also record her peacemaking with her father, the tireless work of her ancestors, and celebrates the freedom that brings her tranquility, contentment, and joy. In this sophomore collection, readers are carried along a journey that asks, how can we learn from pain that grips us tightly? When does a moment seed itself between two halves of our lives? And when do we actually notice? When time is not a sufficient healer, what language allows us to fill our wounds with light, knowing they may never fully close? And where does love go to be laid to rest? And when it rises again, do we name it resurrection, awakening, or reimagining? So that's a description of the book there. And some more information about the author. She's a poet and professor of English education at Teachers College, Columbia University. And she's also the author of Love from the Vortex and Other Poems, which is her archaeological dig on love and intimacy across 3 decades. A literacy educator for over 2 decades, Yolanda travels around the country speaking with fellow educators about race, culturally responsive pedagogy, and the power of love in education. She is the daughter of the late Edgar and Elsie Seeley, the sister of David and Donna, the mother of Olivia, the best friend of Goldie, a woman who loves God and one who still believes in love. So that's some information about her. And this book, sorry, I had to rub it in again, but we got the
Of course,
got the autograph there, I gotta rub it in every time.
It's okay. It's okay.
And the book is dedicated to peace seekers. And the contents it's made up of 6 parts. There's a prologue. There's a section called Residual Detachments. There's a section called Father Apart, not Farther Apart, Father Apart. Peacemaking, meta poems, and an epilogue. So what I'll do, since it's only a few sections and the poems vary in length, so there are longer poems that take up 2 pages, and then there are very short poems that are only 2, 3, or 4 lines long. So what I'll do is I'll share a poem from each one of the major sections of this book, starting with the prologue. There's only one poem in the prologue called Yoli's Return. And it goes as follows. The chain around my neck and the testimony that graces my ears reminds the world where I have been. Back from the vortex, I awake in the morning to my smile, the sparkle in my eyes, and the glow of my skin. Signals of rest and peace I have been stranger to these past 4 years. Years where I played a dangerous game with my heart, pretending to be finished, but not yet done. I lured myself into broken dreams, misled fantasies, and unrequited love. But this smile, this sparkle, is a reflection of a woman who is finally free. Free from lies, free from loyalty to uncommitment, vacillating temperaments, disappearing acts of love that hold tight to empty promises. In the presence of shadows, I shared all of me with men who love themselves too much or not enough. In the end, it is all the same. Now, I sit with peace and hear the freedom song it plays. My heart sings and I rest in the warmth of me and listen. I hear in ways I have never before. This sweet melody brings tranquility, and I celebrate this long-awaited visit. After 4 years, the time has come. Finally, I have arrived. I am home. And yes, and I'm glad, Roo, that you talked about the experience of writing poetry, of how oftentimes we're kind of stuck between these two extremes of the sing-songy, rhymey type of poems, and also those very deep and dramatic poems. And with contemporary poetry compared to classic poetry, there's less rules. When in those classic poems, the rules were so specific that the poems had specific types and names to them, such as limericks, such as haiku, But this poem is broken up in the stanzas, but all the stanzas have a different number of lines in them. I can't really, well, I can show it this way. You can see it from back here that the lines are, there's a different number of lines in each stanza. You can also see that some of the lines are indented too. There's some with just single lines by themselves. So she doesn't follow a specific type of format or set of rules when it comes to laying out her poem visually on the paper. And that's something that you see with contemporary poetry that you may not see as much in the classics. Now I'm going to go over the Valentine's Day 2020 because that's on page 22. So I'm picking these based on the page numbers.
Of course you are.
with the exception of the first one, because then I didn't have a choice. There was only one poem in the prologue. But this is coming from the section of Residual Detachments, Valentine's Day 2020. On Valentine's Day 2020, he said in 2 weeks what you couldn't in 2 years. You must be a Libra, I quipped. We Librans move through the world with love and openness. Naturally, my heart sank when he revealed that he was a child of February, born on your birthday. I'm a Pisces, of course. It pierced my heart to learn he shares your world of duplicity. I was certain it wouldn't last long, so I ended it first. Valentine's Day 2020.
Okay. Look at that working of astrology into there. I like that.
Yeah. I know you appreciate that. I didn't even know she's going to do that. I didn't read these poems ahead of time before I picked them out. I just saw the page numbers and said I'm going to read them.
Hey, listen, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
It always relates. We don't try, it just does.
That's the way it falls. That's just the way it falls. Yeah, let me take this down so I can go. Okay. Now going to the next section called that's the name of the poem. It's called Father Apart, and the name of the poem is called My Father's Hands. And this one is very short. It's only 4 lines. Like I said, there's a variety of lengths in here. The first poem I read, it was two pages. This one is only 4 lines. And then the second one that I read was 1 page. So you got the variety of lengths going on. But this one is called My Father's Hands. And it says, I have my father's hands. They tell a story of struggle and the hard work of becoming. My father's hands.
Woo.
Yep.
Powerful.
Yep. Short but powerful. Yep. And like you also said, Roo, that with these contemporary poems, it's just people talking about their experiences, and that's what you're seeing so far in these poems. Dr. Sealey-Ruiz giving us her experiences. So let's go over to Simon. So that's in the peacemaking section. So we can go over to page 55.
Yay.
5 plus 5 is 10, and 1 plus 0 is 1, and 1 is one of my numbers.
Yes. And like you said, starting at the beginning, so it makes you wonder.
Yep. So this one is called Simon. You have risen from the dead twice now. You and Jesus have talked about your experiences and what it means to save the lives of those around you while sacrificing your own. Your near death saved me, It granted me my life in a way of praying, being, believing, found in my youth and during my daughter's birth, and the idea of true love. Your struggle uplifted me and gave me great pause and cause to express gratitude to God and you for simply deciding to live another day. Simon. And this poem is probably about someone named Simon, since it's titled Simon.
Yes.
Yeah, I've risen from the dead twice now. Tomorrow's Resurrection Day, by the way, y'all. Easter Sunday is tomorrow.
And Easter Monday is Monday because they're contradicting itself, but we ain't gonna talk about that.
Yeah, that's another conversation. Maybe that'll be in the future UnRead book or something. UnRead offering.
Absolutely.
Yep. So we have the next section is called Meta Poems. And at the beginning of this section, Meta Poems, she has a quote from Sharon Salzberg that says, Meta sees truly that our integrity is inviolate, no matter what our life situation may be. And I'll just go on page 69. These are some quick 2-line, 3-line poems. People are the choices they make. Every day from you brings me closer to myself, returning home. There is much to learn from technology about navigating love. Shut down and restart. You settle in, you become comfortable. You don't challenge yourself as much anymore. Road to romance. And the last one. When living between fantasy and dream, what is real can often be missed. Sight unseen. And I would like to close this out with the epilogue. This one's a little bit longer, but it's just like the prologue. The prologue only had one poem. The epilogue only has one poem. So I'm going to close off my poetry offering by reading the last poem in the last section of this book. And this last section is the epilogue, and the title of this poem is called Where I'm From. Matter of fact, go ahead and give a little swig of water here.
Lisa, make sure I can spit this out the right way. I feel you.
That's right. You know, I'm getting a little dry, a little parched here. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Where I'm from. I am from double Dutch, Skelzies, hip hop, rock, skate, roll, bounce, skin knees, and ain't no stopping us now. I am from the haven of the South Bronx, where your neighbors were your relatives, and your relatives were folks who looked out for their neighbors. I am from fighting with boys, then kissing them, but never, ever showing them your treasures. I am from OE and spades, Old Maid and Scrabble, from Solid Gold and Star Search, Michael Jackson and Madonna. I am from blocks that stretched, the burned, abandoned buildings, created and left by landlords who fled the sea, of black and brown who painted, danced, loved, worked their way through this most misunderstood hood. I am from Bayesian roots and southern fields, a blending of tongues chosen wisely for my audience. Yes, sir, to my father. Yes, ma'am, to my mama. And what up? What's good? What's going on? What's going down to my friends? I am from, you are a Sealy and you will be a success. I am from, school is the way in and over, do it and do it well. I am from NYU, Columbia, and back to NYU. A 3-degree PhD diva who nearly left her program and her dream because of the draught of belief in the choices I made. I am from, really? You're a professor? So what do you teach? And from voices that don't expect me to say English. I am from losing 3 children, but having a miracle child, and realizing that motherhood is the most profound and hardest endeavor I have ever taken on. I am from me, you, this moment, where hope reigns supreme and belief of being the change you want to see in the world is the drive unspoken that moves us all. Where I'm from. And that is my offering for this 2025 National Poetry Month UnRead Book Review episode, The Peace Chronicles by Dr. Yolanda Sealey-Ruiz. Amazon link is in the description. You know what? I'll go back and add her website. I mean, she wants you to get it from Amazon, but she does have a website too, so you can learn more about the poet there. But yeah, that's my offering. And now, oh yeah, I gotta say something about that last poem, Where I'm From, because I wrote a Where I'm From poem back when I was in high school, and I think I left it in my classroom because I would have read that one today too, but I think I left it in my classroom. I don't think I brought it with me, but I did a Where I'm From as a class assignment, and it sounded very similar to hers, just with my experiences and my cultural references and childhood references.
You know, it's so interesting you said that, because as soon as you started reading that one, I thought about a challenge that was going around the internet a while ago, where people were being asked to write a Where I'm From, and people were doing, they had like a base poem with blank lines, and you can fill it in, putting your own things in there, and then just kind of reading it out. I really appreciate, so much that you said about this, and I'm glad that we went in the order we did, and I was able to ask you the questions versus just talking about these poems, because what you said that was really key was that the rules. You like I said, you were taught that there was a right and a wrong way, and for those forms it is, but real expression, if we're gonna do it, needs to be free, because so do we. If I have to give you something a particular way, it's because that's the way you want it. But if I'm giving you all of me, it's gonna come out like it come out. And I love that, because sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short. Sometimes you go around the bush, sometimes it's direct and to the point. And I love that. And I think one of the things I really appreciate about the work, much like what you said, is that she broke this into pieces, and then allowed each piece to be as long or as short as it needed to be, and it didn't have to follow any rhyme or reason. It just was, and the other part of that is that it's a perfect example of being relatable to now. You know what I mean? Like I said, a lot of times when we got this classic stuff, it may have been relatable, but it was so submerged in the language of that time that we can't see the relation of it in correlation with our lives now. Her work is very much, this can happen to your sister, this happened to me, this is my life, this is who I am. And I think that's fantastic. And I love poetry, spoken word, all of that stuff, because it really does. It sets the tone for a person to be able to just be themselves and share with you that intimate look into their minds and hearts, and ups and downs in this journey, because I think that's important that we document all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. It's all important. We document it, and that documentation, lives on beyond us and serves as our legacy.
Yes, yes. And I further go say this is that, like I said, poetry has been something I struggled to write with, but there's other things and other ways that I'm able to write about my journey. And I think that's the important thing about poetry too, is it gives you a space, and art, like, just, painting and, crafting of any kind. It gives you this space where there's not a way I have to say what I want to say. I can just say it.
Mm-hmm.
And then allow people to come into my world. You know what I mean? To come in and find those places, see those places where we are one. And I think that is just amazing. And that sounds like an amazing book. I definitely want to check out the sister, and to know that she has a Where I'm From in the back. I'm wondering if that challenge that was going around wasn't based on that particular poem. I don't keep up with the interwebs that much in that way, but I do remember specifically that there was a challenge going around with that Where I'm From.
Yeah. Well, the Where I'm From format, that's that's something that's been around. Like I said, I wrote one in high school, and that was, and I'm talking, like 16 years ago. So, and I'm sure it was done before then also. So it's probably, things happen in cycles. They reappear every few years, just like fashion trends, reappear, every couple decades and things like that. But I'm and then with the technological age that we're living in now, we have, you can not only express yourself the way that you want to, and have the freedom to express yourself without certain rules, just based on the structure of your writing. But with the technological age, we have so many different platforms where you can get your work out there without having it be approved by a publisher or someone accepting it and say, yeah, we'll take it and print it, or no, we don't, no, you change this and that. We don't have to worry about that now. So you can express yourself even more freely in this day and age with all the self-publishing platforms, if you're going the book route, and just all of the internet platforms, if you're just want to publish individual pieces of writings. Possibilities are endless. We have no limitations, in this day and age.
Absolutely. And I think also, one of the things I love about writing as a whole is that there's a place of not only expression but escapism and fantasy, that's able to go into some of these works. My mother was a romantic, and so she loved reading romance books. That was not my vibe. That was not my vibe. But I would read one every once in a while just to see what she was reading. And I can see that there's a world very much wrapped up in, the romance of it all. But when you listen to this contemporary work about Valentine's Day, or even the one about Simon, it's just like, well, that's different. That's romance, but it's not in the way that you would expect it to be, this loving outpour of candles and soft lights and strawberries and champagne. So I think that it's really it's awesome to see these expressions in different ways. And again, this is not to say that the classic works did not offer us that, but again, a lot of times without true instruction, I think that that some of these works get lost. And that's why it's important to revisit. I think that's really important. Why it's important to revisit is because you are now able to look at it through a lens that you weren't as a child. And it really can it, like I said, it can inspire you, and definitely you'll be able to see new versions of it in the works that we see today, because again, there's nothing new under the sun. We tell people that all the time. We're not here recreating nothing. We just here sharing. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a wonderful offering. And for those of you who've read this book, if you have anything you'd like to share, please do. If you have an old classic that is one of your favorites, please share that as well. We love to hear what our audience has to say, because again, we do this for not only us, but you. We appreciate that. So Nick, tell us, you came across this author like you did. Is that her latest work, or does she have more work available for us now?
Yeah. She just has the two works. This is the second one. The first one was the one that I mentioned, Love from the Vortex, another poem. So this is the latest one as of right now.
Absolutely. And you said you have all of that information in our description. I love it. Nick, you wrote that great Roses Are Red poem. Tell me, is poetry something that you use as a form of expression in your own journey?
No, I wouldn't say so. I would just say it's like one of those once in the blue, type of things, whether it's through an assignment or if I just feel inspired. Like if it's through an assignment where I'm specifically instructed to write a poem, and that's when I was in school, like I mentioned the Where I'm From poem. But the rhyming part of it, though, that's something that I do. That's something that I can't avoid. I won't avoid doing. Like I always gotta be like, yeah, I gotta make a rhyme, because I listen to so much. I listen to so much hip hop, So I read it as a poem, but I could like read it and spit it as a rap, if we're being honest. And I actually no, I answer that wrong, because I'm thinking about poetry in the traditional sense. But if I think about all of the rhymes that I wrote, yeah, definitely during my childhood, I wrote a lot of raps in my childhood.
Let me find out you got a discography somewhere.
I mean, written, written, and I was thinking about, and if I do put it out, I'm going to have to wait until I'm like, like I'm a super elder, or I have to have it come out after I transition, because when I talk about how bad those a lot of those raps are, I don't mean like in terms of the quality. Well, yeah, the quality, yeah, but the language, like a lot of the stuff I was saying in there, I'll probably get canceled for, in 2025. So
it's really true. I mean, especially if you writing with with all that passion and energy of a moment, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like I find like I don't write poetry, as you would say, just sitting down saying I'm going to write some poetry, but I do find when I have these great bursts of this need to express myself, I'll sit down and I write something that ends up looking like a poem, if you will, but not really. So when you go back and read it, you can tell kind of where you were when you were writing it. I was like, man, I was angry. I was hot as fish grease when I wrote this. You know what I mean? Or I had my rose-colored glasses on and I was seeing everything with hearts in my eyes. You know what I mean? So it's a great form of expression. And one of the things that I think I really, if I had an opportunity to do any work in that way, like spoken word, I would definitely want to do it over like some cool jazz music or some lo-fi beats or something like that. Like that's where I can see myself in that space. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see it too.
Kicking the facts, you know what I'm saying? Talking about books and music playing in the background. I
can see that. I can see that too. You doing that live, or you doing it, over the traditional radio too, because you got that radio voice.
Hey, listen, I appreciate that.
Yeah. For me, I guess you could think of it as an alter ego, because on the surface, I'm this teenager. So as a teenager, I'm a honor roll, youth choir in the church, very, very buttoned up, good, good boy. But when I got into the rhyme books, it was like that. That's where the influence of all of the the G Unit and the Dipset and all of the gangster rap I was listening to, and all of the gun bars and gun references and the misogyny that's in there. That was like the alter ego, the hidden self that nobody that nobody saw. That I was influenced by all of the rap music I was listening to, and all of the peers that were around me, at the time up here in Jersey. So that's where I was at that time. But then also mixing it in with a little bit of consciousness too. Like there was a couple of conscious joints in there too, because I was also going back into and doing my history on like Public Enemy and KRS-One and Eric B and Rakim and all that. So it's very interesting looking at that written discography over the years, and how the range and how all over the place I was with with things.
You know what? I think it's great though. One of the things that you said about waiting to put it out there when you're an elder, I think that would be so cool.
Listen, because I don't care at that point. I can't get fired from my job. I'll be too old to care about getting canceled on the internet and people complaining.
It'll be marvelous. It'll be marvelous. Put me down for a signed copy, please, and thank you.
Got you.
But I think that's great. Having musicians as children, one of the things when they were in their zone, like creating, like, sometimes they have like an all night session. So I'm listening to the same beat over and over again, and I would find myself writing my own little and I never forget the like horrified look my son had on his face one time when I was like, "Ooh, I think I got some bars for that." He was just like, he's like, "Sure, Mom, share your bars." I'm just like,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and do that.
And look, and it sounded so good in my head. It sounded so good in there, but it did not come out the way that I expected. And Queen Rashi, yes, that's one of my favorites as well. That's a classic right there. That's a classic contemporary. Definitely love that. Mm-hmm. Yes, see you doing some spoken word. Yes. My thing is, if I have to memorize it, forget about it. I'm not her. That's not my thing.
I'm with you on that. Like I'm gonna need me. If you talking about memorization, I'm gonna need me a few months to get there.
Look, and the crazy part is you wrote it and you still need time.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, I don't think the memorizing thing would be good for me. I think if you gave me a theme and you gave me some music and gave me a minute, I could take some facts and some research and kind of put it together to make it sound nice. Like, yeah, so back when we were studying the Mayans, and blah, 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 and the Olmec heads of Easter Island, So if we did that, I could probably do it. But if you ask me to memorize something, you forget about it. It's songs that I have sang since the 70s, and every once in a while I still mess up the words because I can't remember. So, yep. But I think this is a wonderful wonderful way to express yourself. And any poets out there, just because Poetry Month will be over, don't mean you can't reach out to us. Again, you are authors, you are artists, you are our brothers and sisters. We love to share your work, with everyone. This is our form of legacy, people. I don't think any of us are trying to be like Barbara Walters or anything like that, but I think what you do see is that people are taking a proactive approach at preserving something for the future, to talk about the things that were important to us. And these books, be it classic or contemporary, are important to us, and we talk about why, and we have a great time doing it. So, with that being said, if you have anything you'd like to share, please do not hesitate to share with us. We love to talk about all these things, books and otherwise. And I did mention Esoteric Art Space. We'll be bringing something with that soon, talking about symbology, using pictures to talk about some of these same topics we are talking about in these books. So that'll be a lot of fun. I definitely want to see some of the artists coming out there and sharing their works, and sharing with us and allowing us to be able to not only interpret for ourselves but ask questions. So I'm excited about that.
I was muted.
That's all right.
Yes. I'm excited about that as well. And yeah, man, we had a great time today. Another hit, another year. This is our second. I mean, it's only a second year of UnRead, but this is our second poetry month episode. So yeah, it was a great one, and we switched it up from last year. Last year we had our guests come and share their writings, and then this year I share my writing and along with our offerings. So this was fun, and I was really excited about it because I knew I was going to surprise Roo with this. So in that sense, it was a surprise me week in that sense, because I surprised her with this poem. I didn't tell her I was doing this.
It's your dope rhymes.
Yeah. Yep. I didn't tell her I was doing this. I'm like, oh, she's gonna be giddy when she hear this, when she see me do this.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. So yeah, we had a great time, and I think it's about time for us to get on up out of here, man, and enjoy this 80-degree weather we got up in the northeast.
You better stop playing. We don't even have that kind of weather. I'm mad. It was snowing last week.
Listen,
but today is pretty, and that's what we working with. We working with today, y'all. So I'm gonna get out there and enjoy some of that, and I know Nick is as well. Well, Nick, I just want to say thank you for being here with me another week, and thank you for allowing me to be with you, because we are doing what we love. We are doing what we love,
Absolutely.
Sharing books, unread and otherwise. So for me, I'm just gonna say peace, and I'll let you take us on out of here.
And hey, listen, I'm gonna say peace too, and say that we out, and we'll see you on the next episode, which is May 3rd. Yep, May 3rd, first Saturday in May. We'll be back with our Surprise Me Week.
Yes. Surprise.
Peace, y'all. See y'all next time.